What is the difference between empathy and sympathy, and how can empathy become a superpower for you no matter what you're doing in life, whether it be as a founder, an entrepreneur, manager, leader, a parent, a spouse? Empathy versus sympathy and how it can become a superpower. In this video, I'm going to break down the difference between the two, and then we're going to talk about some applications and the benefits of empathy versus sympathy. And I'm going to start off with the mistake that's very common, that people use empathy and sympathy interchangeably. And from a psychology perspective, especially when it comes to coaching or advisory or helping people, being a leader, they are two completely different things. And it's important for us to recognize the difference and manage ourselves accordingly so we can be more effective in our lives. We're going to first start off with the entire concept of sympathy. Here's a graphic, of visualization. Sympathy is really a very emotional state. It is the state where you feel something because the other person's feeling something. For example, if someone has gone through a very traumatic experience, you feel bad for them because they feel bad. And it is a completely natural response. It happens without even thinking about it. If you see, for example, if you're walking along and you just are reminded and you see someone who appears to be destitute, then you will automatically go through your emotional memory banks. And if it relates and you're triggered by something, by that emotion, you may feel the same emotion. So you feel something because they feel something. That's how it works. The same thing can happen with pain, sympathetic pains. It looks painful, therefore you start to feel painful. The other day I saw a video of a guy take a scooter and he tried to do a big jump and he lands on the rail right between his legs. I'm feeling sympathetic pains just by watching that. But it can be on the positive side too. When you see people celebrating and what have you, like you feel sympathetic, expression. So you feel a certain way because you're watching them feel a certain way. And therefore it's an emotional experience. It can create bonding and all those things. The problem is that when you don't manage your sympathy properly, you start to feel bad because they seem like they're feeling bad. Then a whole bunch of stuff can flood in and you leave yourself vulnerable to some inappropriate processing. First, you may want to start coping yourself when you're not even going through it. So a lot of people talk about vicarious trauma or vicarious experiences. You watch somebody go through that, and so then you want to take action yourself, and it's just in your head. It's not reality. So you may respond inappropriately in that situation. The other times you can begin to open yourself up for guilt and for shame. And other people may even do that to you. For example, they may feel angry and feel bad, and therefore they'll act in a way where they'll want you to feel angry or to feel bad. And therefore, I call it, or it's been called, the race to the bottom of the brainstem, because you're just going straight to the emotional part of the brain. And it is especially hard when you're trying to help somebody or lead somebody as a founder, as a coach, as a counselor. If you are always trying to manage your own emotions in that situation, then you can become ineffective because all that cognitive load, your cognitive capacity, goes towards managing your own emotions. Therefore, using emotional intelligence, using skills, and understanding, hey, the self-awareness and getting to self-regulation. Wait a second, I'm feeling bad because I'm seeing someone else feel bad. And what am I going to do about it? What does this mean to me? How am I going to process that through? That's important step in terms of our own social emotional maturity, growing as a person and being effective. Let's talk about empathy. Empathy is, people call it a cognitive process. It's a choice. you're choosing to understand how they feel. So it's organized. So we see this process happen between someone who's feeling sympathy and all the jumble of emotions going on, and it gets organized in a cognitive manner where you say, I'm going to empathize, I'm going to step in their shoes and attempt to understand how they might be feeling and not feel the same thing. You may feel compassion for them, which is a level of empathy that's very important. And you may feel your own emotions for them. You may even feel a sense of anger, a moral outrage that someone's going through those sorts of things. And you may even feel sympathy, but you're choosing to use empathy to organize those thoughts and to act appropriately. How do these two work together? Well, we all can't help but feel sympathy. Now, sometimes you just don't because you can't relate, or there are other individuals that just have no that they're just desensitized in many different ways, and that's very possible. But imagine you're in a customer service situation and a customer comes to you and they just feel really bad because of their experience with your product or an experience with you, a service that you provided. If you start to feel bad because they feel bad, you're going to start to cope, and it's called copium, right? And you may act inappropriately. Now you're dealing with the emotions, like, again, the cognitive load and your emotional capacity to properly handle the customer service situation might become an issue. Same thing happens in sales, customer discovery, when you're doing interviews and what have you. And what you want to do is then organize those thoughts and say, wait a second, let me step in their shoes. And you kind of ask yourself, why might they be feeling that way? You also ask yourself, what am I thinking and why am I talking, before you respond? And that's what the cognitive process of empathy entails, is you get organized. So whenever you're in a leadership situation, for example, and someone is saying a few things and you're feeling emotion because they're going through some emotion, well, you want to stop that and just step back and say, okay, wait a second. Can I think about how they feel, right? Can I imagine? Can I put themselves in their shoes? And what do I understand about how they feel? Now, here's a tip. The first thing when you're practicing empathy is to accept how they feel, no matter what. You may completely disagree. I was in a situation where my wife and I are talking, and she's sharing something with me that makes me feel bad. She feels bad, and it really comes down to my fault. I also feel bad. I start feeling guilt. I start feeling shame, and I go right at it and pretty much invalidate her feelings and say, I'm not going to accept the way that you feel right now. You're wrong. I even said that. You're wrong. And what I was doing was I was trying to understand, or get her to understand me, before I accepted her feelings. The first step is to say, I accept before having to understand. I seek to understand rather than be understood. And that starts with accepting their emotional state and saying, okay, now how do I understand? What can I do to put myself in their shoes? What were they going through? Separate from me. I'm detached from their emotional state because I don't want to be compromised and respond inappropriately because I'm dealing with my own emotions. I'm triggered in a different way. And you may think it's cold and calculating. It is. You are not going to respond. And a lot of times what happens is we use this technique called gray rocking, where someone's feeling bad and they're ready to unload on you, and you're not going to feel bad. You're going to go into gray rock. You're just going to be boring. You're just going to be gray, vanilla, bland, emotionally speaking, and you're just going to respond completely detached from that situation, and you're not going to be experiencing their emotion. And again, this works in every instance when you are trying to build a company, or when you're trying to lead or parent your children, work with family, work with people, especially if they're in an emotional state. Now, here's what happens if you do this correctly. This is something called joy, and the joy interaction between the two, this is where it becomes very powerful. Someone's coming to you and they feel bad. They just feel bad because something happened, and they're complaining to you, which we always say complaint is just code for an unmet need. They're complaining to you, they feel bad, and you want to go into sympathetic response and say, I feel bad because I see that you feel bad. You want to recognize that because it's just going to be natural. And you're going to say, okay, wait a second. I'm going to seek to understand. I'm going to accept. I'm going to empathize and put myself in their shoes. So then you create the space for them and say, I understand, because you've given me a signpost. This is a little signal that you feel bad because I'm starting to feel bad. I get emotional, but wait, I'm going to step there. I'm going to make this about you, and you are going to process your emotions, and I'm going to empathize. I'm going to seek to understand. I'm going to communicate to you that I see you, I hear you, and I understand, and therefore I care about you. And that person is going to get the signal and say, wait a second, I can just feel bad with Ed, and he's not going to try to fix me. He's not going to direct me. He's not going to give me advice. He's just going to, emote, and he's going to say, I see you, I hear you, I understand, and I care about this conversation, and I'm glad that you're here. And that, to me, is the definition of joy, is I'm motivated to be with you in my strength, but especially my weakness. And so we take sympathy and the reaction sympathy as, if someone's feeling weak, we're willing to be in that space with them, stay in that pocket, and understand that they feel weak, and begin to understand where they're coming from, and say, it's okay. I'm glad that you're doing this, especially if they're feeling shame or vulnerable. Just creating that safety, they're going to be so glad and motivated to be with you, having that interaction. Same thing goes for celebrations. When someone comes to you totally happy, I know a lot of people, this happens to me. I get super happy and I want to celebrate something that gives me a sense of pleasure, and other people can't relate. And so they begin to question, should you actually be feeling that way? That's not joy. Right there. That's someone processing their own junk or their own emotions and putting it on me and projecting, which happens because they're experiencing the emotional journey of sympathy themselves, which, I understand. But instead, I want someone to understand the reason I'm celebrating, the reason I'm happy, and put themselves in my shoes and say, wow, that means a lot to you, right? I can see this totally means a lot to you. It makes sense to me where you're coming from. Therefore, I'm going to celebrate with you, right? And now you've conjoined, you brought together sympathy and empathy together, but you're in control. You're in cognitive control. And going back to the foundations, it's self-awareness, self-regulation, and also all those social skills, all the package of emotional intelligence to, learn and grow. How do you do this? You have to practice. The best way is to put yourself in those situations where you're going to sympathize. Put yourself in situations where someone's feeling bad. Let's just, hit the nail on the head or get super direct. A lot of people feel bad about the political landscape, a lot of polarization and different things that are going on. Well, everyone's feeling bad because someone else is feeling bad, and it just creates this domino effect and this contagion. Okay. I know a founder who calls it an emotional disease. You infect each other. Thank you, Dr. Casara Andre, for giving me that term. And the contagion of the emotion spreads because of sympathy. So how do you stop that? Well, you practice empathy. So you stop and go, wait a second. I'm feeling sympathetic pains. I'm feeling sympathetic emotions. I'm feeling bad because they feel bad, but no, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to self-regulate. I'm going to catch myself, and I'm going to accept where they are, and I'm going to detach myself, and I'm going to use these skills to empathize. I'm going to ask them. I'm going to share with them. I'm going to go through a process, a conversation, and I'm not going to try to fix them. I'm not going to try to do anything to teach them or do stuff for them or tell them what to do. I'm just going to be in that moment, be intentionally mindful and present, and I'm going to do everything I can to understand and put myself in their shoes. That's how you practice. And if you do that, you are going to be known as a joyful person, not a person who's happy all the time. That's not my definition of joy. Someone that motivates others to be together in their strength, but especially their weakness. And that's what we all need. Joy does so many amazing things for the brain. And this is my investment thesis about joy effects that we're going to be using for all our startups, all our founders, for all our coaching and training and leadership. That's what this is all about. So bringing together the world of sympathy and empathy creates tremendous amounts of joy. Neither of them are good nor bad. They're skills that we can all learn. You may say, well, I'm just not an empathetic person. Doesn't matter. That's okay. It's a skill you can learn. There are other people who say, I'm an empath. I'm intuitive. I can't help but feel what other people are feeling. I get that. But that doesn't mean you have to act inappropriately and respond inappropriately. This leads to things like compassion fatigue and people burning out if you're feeling all these sympathetic pains because everybody around you feels bad. So therefore, you're going to start to feel bad. That's where you lock this down and you learn these skills. It's a leadership competence that we all can gain and become more effective in all areas of our life. So there you have it. Please feel free, leave a question, comment, things like that. Consider it for yourself and say, how can empathy become that superpower for me in whatever domain that you're practicing, wherever you're trying to exercise your competence, excel in life. Like I said, I think it's a great superpower, especially when I'm doing entrepreneurial activities, developing products, I'm being a founder, advising other founders, being a consultant, all that good stuff. Appreciate you checking this video out. Hopefully it's been informative. Once again, leave comments and ask questions. Love getting that to help me create future videos. In the meantime, have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.